It's time for Pure Performance.
Get your stopwatches ready. It's time for Pure Performance with Andy Grabner and Brian Wilson. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Pure Performance. My name is Brian Wilson, and as always, I have Andy Grabner virtually by my side. Andy.
Yeah, virtually. Hi.
Hey, so this is just for the listeners. This is our first recording back from Perform. It's Monday, the week after Perform, and what a week that was, right? We were really busy.
Yeah, and it's not only Monday after Perform, it's also Monday after the Super Bowl. And just saying, because I happen to be in Boston right now, and I'm wearing my Brady jersey. So just for the football fans out there.
I can't stand football and football culture, but that's me. I'm one of those.
It was not a good
people.
game. It was not a good game, but you have to win these games too, I guess.
Yeah, well, that's called a championship, yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we're back to regular content again, but I think today's episode we're going to build on some of concepts that we were talking about at Perform. Really exciting one. So why don't you go ahead and introduce our guests, and we'll dive into it.
Yeah, so I was track captain at Perform for the DevOps NoOps track, and I had Sumit from Intuit speaking, and he was joined by Sonia Shefrev, one of our technical product managers. And she actually, in the session that was all about shifting left and about actually Intuit showed how they are reusing production monitoring data to create test scripts, and also extract test data for that. But he was talking about how they do it at Intuit, and then Sonia brought up a point that we have a partner in Europe, Probit, that is actually trying to solve this problem as well, and I think have successfully solved the problem. And that's actually why our guest today, Thomas should be with us from Probit, and I think the reason why we invited him because we want to learn a little bit more about why they actually built the product, what kind of problem they solve, and without having me now going through this. Thomas, are you with us?
Yes. Hello, Andy. Thank you for inviting me.
Maybe, before we get started, you want to quickly give an introduction on who you are. Also, I think it's not only you, but there's also Frederick, and just give a little background, and then we dive right into the topic.
Yeah, perfect. Frederick couldn't be here, but I'll tell everything about him if you want to. So I am Thomas Rotté, and my colleague is Frederick Bijl, and we have been working together at KBC Bank for a number of years. And while we were doing that, KBC is using Dynatrace for its monitoring. Since about 6 years, we were first using AppMon, and now we're using Dynatrace. So we've been working with that, but we were responsible for the quality assurance within the direct channels, the online applications. And while we were doing that, we were facing some issues, especially a lot of issues that were rising for the testing environment. So we have a number of testing environments at this KBC banking. We have the dev development, the first end-to-end testing, and the UAT development, and so on. So that goes on. But this environment are definitely sometimes not representative for what is going on in the production system. We have in the production system 1 million users which are using our applications. In the testing system, we have 20 testers who have to test all of this. So that's not representative, especially when you are looking at performance issues. If you only have 20 users, the performance will be better. So that was one thing that we were facing, but also because there were not that much users, we didn't have that much data also, because you want your site, your web application to be used, enabled to have representative data. And that's in fact always a bit the problem with a test environment. With a test environment, you want it to be stable because you want it to be comparable to what it was before, but you also want it to be up to date. And this being stable of your test environment and this being up to date is actually a great paradox. You cannot solve that. If you make it up to date, it's not stable anymore because it's changing. If you want to make it stable, it's not up to date anymore. And Yeah, this was one of the major problems that we were facing, together with then a few years ago the GDPR. In Europe, it's very hot, that GDPR thing, because it can cost you a lot of money. And GDPR is actually pretty strict in using production data in your testing environment. It's allowed, but you have to be as secure as in your production environment. So most of the times it's just seen as you cannot use production data in your test environment. And comparing to that, we had to find a solution. So it was just me and Frederick, just two employees, developers in the KBC Online application. And we were facing this issue, wanting to solve this for our own product that we have. So that was the KBC Touch application.
So let me ask you before you continue. I think it's obviously a problem that not only you guys have been facing at KBC. I think it's a problem that everybody has been facing since the dawn of I guess software testing and software engineering, right? I mean, and I think you brought it. It was really nice the way you said it, right? You want to have stability because you want to do regression analysis from build to build, but on the other side, you want to be up to date. So I like also the way you phrased it there. Now, what I want to ask you though, in the beginning when you started your explanation, you said at KBC you were 20 testers and you, as compared to, let's say, 1 million users out there in production. But solving that problem, I mean, that problem has been solved, right? I mean, we have test tools that can simulate hundreds and thousands and millions of users. So that the load generation itself, like using tools, I would assume that problem has been solved for a while, right?
Well, yes, indeed, there are a number of load tests, and they have been around for a number of time. Now, the issue with this traditional testing software, and you see that at a lot of tools, actually all the traditional test automation software like LoadRunner or Neotis or Selenium or whatever, it always works at the same system. You have to think very good about your scenario. What are you going to execute? And you're thinking, I want to do this, and then this click, and then this something else. And this scenario is then repeated a lot. And it's repeated 1 million times or whatever. So there you can generate load. But again, it is not very representative considered to what's going on in the production system. Because in the production system, there is going on a lot more, and all at the same time, and they are interfering with each other. And this is something that we miss in traditional test automation, for especially that interference. We want to avoid it as much as possible in traditional test automation. Now, this is what we want to face now. In production, we have this. We have a lot of different scenarios. We tested it in our application, and there are really millions of different scenarios that are possible. And it's not possible to test automate all of them. It takes too much time, too much resources to create it, but especially to maintain it, because maintenance of traditional test scenarios is quite time consuming. And time consuming is, of course, money consuming also.
Yeah, I think too, a big issue there is even if you had the resources to do all of that, how do you know and how do you find out what to set up, right? Maybe you have some BI tools that will give you some information on what people are clicking on. Do you really, though, understand the full end-to-end path that users are going through? Or, I know a lot of times in my past, there would be the product design team and or marketing team saying, well, this is how we envision users using the tool, right? So no matter what you're using, it's still a guess, right? It's not what the users are specifically doing.
Indeed, and that is exactly what we know now because of Dynatrace. Because Dynatrace monitors everything, every click of every user of what he is doing. And so we know what scenarios the user are actually doing. So we can use that to replay our sessions in the test environment. Still, we are facing this GDPR thing also. So you cannot just replay in your test scenario whatever you are doing in production. For example, yes, and this was a banking application, so we were able to transfer money from one customer to another. So it's not really a good idea to use production data.
So Thomas, before you continue, so just if I can recap, so the problem that you really solved is basically automating the automation, meaning you solve the problem of automatically creating test scripts that are reflecting what's actually really happening in production. That means the real user click flows. And that means with this, you made sure that you are testing the right things also on a continuous basis. So you automated the automation of creating automated test scripts and then also automatically maintaining them, I guess, right? I think that's the big, that's
perfectly rephrased. We are doing test automation, but that doesn't sound very good.
Test automation. Yeah, well, I'm sure there's we need to talk with some marketing folks here to figure out the sexy term, but I still like it, right? Automate the automation. I mean, all right. So how do you do it?
So first of all, we know a lot of what's going on in production system. We have these monitoring systems, and we know what the users are doing. Also, what the users are doing in different channels, how they interact with issues that are arising. So we know a lot about it, but it's a lot of data. It's a huge amount of data, and it's just streaming in continuously. Dynatrace picks up every click of every user, so it continues to gain data, and the data is enormous. Still, we need to be GDPR compliant, so we cannot use the data of the customer itself. We just want its behavior. And what we have added to Dynatrace is actually we let Dynatrace stream its sessions to us, and we are adding an AI component on top of that, so it makes a model of the behavior patterns. And this model of behavior patterns is continuously updated. So it learns the behavior changes which are done in production. And each change in the production system will be reflected in this model that we are building. And it's the model that actually will be used in the test automation system to generate the scenarios. And actually the basis of it is the click paths. You just say, you click here, you open this, you scroll, you load some page, and then you are doing whatever. And below that, we are adding probability distributions. And that's what the name Probit is from. It's a short for probability unit. So these probability distributions give you an idea about input values, give you also an idea about what click paths the different users are following. And so this input distribution, for example, again, we go to an account, to a banking application, you have a transfer, the amount to transfer, you have a probability distribution in the amount of transfer to send. And adding all this to the model makes it very rich, but still handleable, both to adapt it if some new sessions are streaming in from the Dynatrace, and to use it in your test automation system.
So let me ask, with the model that you're creating, because I'm trying to understand all this. I mean, it's awesome, and to me, you're talking about what I, as a former tester, this was like the holy grail, right? I used to say we need something to create these. Now, when you talk about this model, is this every single possible user click path that comes in is going to be executed by this, or is it doing something to say it's going to look at the commonalities and start weaving out, or it's going to create a model based on certain percentage of the most common click paths?
Well, it will do both, actually, because we are considering each user session which is coming in to change our system, to adapt what's going on. But it will also take into account that there is a possibility to have noise, to have some user that did something which is actually impossible, or some monitoring session that comes in which doesn't make any sense. So if it only occurs once, it will be fading out very soon. And we'll take care about how often it comes, how long ago the previous occurrence was. And for the probability distributions, we should only take it into account if a minimum number of customers used it, because we don't want it to be traceable to a specific customer. because then, you lose the GDPR functionality. It shouldn't be traceable. But if it's not traceable, if you have multiple customers adding this data, this means that you will not replay everything. You will not replay the things that only occurred once. And also, if they occur very few, they will fade out of the model.
Right. Now, and just speaking on that, because sometimes very few, and we see that on the monitoring side, right? There might be like a cron job that runs once a day. Do you have the ability to say this one that occurs rarely, though, is still an important business path? Like it might be, I can't think of a specific example, but let's say there was some user action that maybe happens 10 times a day because it's not common for users to do, but it's important that gets tested. Is there a way for you to manipulate the model to make sure you include some of those paths that might not be, what's the term we have for that, Andy? Low occurrence but high business value?
Yeah, I think that's what it right. You wanna change the priority of certain things, yeah.
Yeah, we're working on that. So now we have a number of options to be able to replay our scenarios. You can say play everything, or play it in a lower amount, because your testing system is normally a little bit scaled lower than your production system. So you can say replay 10% with the same probability distribution. For the specific parts, we're still working on that. We are a startup, so we created this thing inside of KBC. We are now bringing it to the market because we see that the problem is not only KBC, but it occurs at a lot of different companies. And so we are adjusting our application to be generic enough to be usable for several companies. And there are a lot of requests coming in. And this is one that we heard before. So certain scenarios, you should give more value to it because they are rare, but still valuable. We're working on that, but we don't have it yet. So maybe in one of the next releases, it will be available.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Hey, and Thomas, you have the model keeps constantly, is constantly up to date. And when you say you replay the model, so that means at a certain point in time, you say, now, please generate the test scripts, the actual test scripts out of that model. Or is it where you can, at any point in time, say, I want to look at the model from, let's say, yesterday, because you can still go back in history as well and then create the tests? Or how does this actually work? How do you get from the model to the actual tests, and how do they look like? Did you write your own testing engine? Are you repurposing some existing testing tools? How does that look like?
Yeah. It is indeed a combination of different tools that we have used. So one is the thing that is streaming in from Dynatrace. The other one is the AI system. Can't go into too many details about the AI because the patent is still pending, but it's working now. So this model is stored at our place, so you can always have a look at how the model looks like, because that gives you a lot of insight into the business intelligence of your application. So that's always available. What we normally do is we spin up a number of bots, automated processes, and each time a bot is starting, it will request one scenario to the model, and then the model will just generate one scenario that the bot has to replay. And afterwards, you can have a view on it. It's quite graphical on how the bot really did the executions, where it went good, where it went wrong, and give an overview on that. So it's generated at runtime actually.
So that's cool. That means you can, if I get this right, let's say if 1 million users, your model learns from the 1 million real users, and then you launch, let's say, 10,000 bots. So every bot is basically playing, real user, and then says, hey model, give me the next test that I should execute. And then your model is on the one side a model, but it's also a service that generates the next test case that should be executed by the next available bot. Is this right?
Yes, that's perfect. Yeah, that's indeed our intention.
So how does, one of the biggest issues in maintaining these things, right, is besides creating it and all that, whether it's a web-driven test or an HTTP request type of load test, there's always the issue that testers face where the development team or the front-end teams make some kind of change and your script no longer works because something is not recognized. Have you figured out a way to take that into account, or what happens in that scenario where maybe a new release comes in, and again, my mind is strictly in the current or older tool, so it might not, I might not be thinking of how you get around this, but if it's, relying on a specific DOM element or a parameter being passed, and they maybe change the lettering of the parameter, how does your system handle that if it's like a new release gets put in and you're going to run the previous model?
Yeah, that's indeed one of the main issues that occurring in test automation in general, and we also face that, of course. Now we see that more and more companies are going towards a continuous implementation, continuous deploy also. So the releases are quite small and often. And it works the best if our testing system or our Probit system is in such a system that the change is not that big. So that's one. Now we have some customers in which the changes are still quite big and which does the releases only 4 times a year or something like that. And there we have indeed that problem. Now you have to look at it as a whole in your application. And what often happens is you change something in your application and something breaks in an entirely unexpected other spot of your application. These regression defects are really annoying, especially for business and for testers, which say, hey, we have given that to the developers already 10 times and it is broken. Now, that's the thing that we want to face, that your regression should still work. So you have a new development, all the other features in your application should be tested. But it's very annoying work for a tester because you have to retest the entire application while you know that actually nothing has changed. So we are doing that for you. The new testing is indeed something that we cannot cope with. We are also working on an idea on that, but we are focusing on regression testing most. So if you say the new things, that's mostly very often tested by the developer, by the business that is that is requesting this change. So it's tested very often, and we want to add to that the regression testing on the entire application. And sometimes things get broken if you remove a certain page or something, or change indeed the naming of some element. That happens, and then it will indicate this as, hey, there is a problem over there. This can be a false positive, and so it will be indicated that there is an error over there. If you are changing that, especially when you are in a continuous deployment, you know that this is changed. I should ignore this. So it will not be holding your next release, but it will indicate this as an issue. And yeah, the developer or the business guy should be aware of the fact that this is changed actually. So it's not completely gone. It's still an issue that we are facing.
Right, and I think you make a good point too, right? Obviously, this can't, no tool that's modeling production traffic can take into account like new features, right? Mm-hmm. So, and anybody who does any kind of testing knows there is a combination and all different kinds of test styles for different things that you want to test. If are you doing a load test? Are you doing a soak test? Are you doing a new feature test? So this just adds to that arsenal of, all right, so if we have 80% of our work is this regression part, with Probit, now you can eliminate all the heavy work you had to do on that 80% part and concentrate more on the newer features, which you're going to have to manually script and all that until obviously they go into production and now they become part of this model. So this sounds really amazing. I got to say, obviously it's not going to be something that solves every single world problem in the testing world, right? But this is. Wow.
Well, no, we are not selling silver bullets because silver bullets, I don't really believe in them. But this is really an addition to what the testers are doing, especially also for the stability of your entire application. You can say these testers mostly have this scenario, hey, you have to test this and this and this. But if they are stuck in the middle because of some downage or a 404 in your application, it's very annoying for them, and they cannot work on the work that they really should do. So we are taking care of the general coverage of your application and also the stability of your application, so the testers can do the things that they can focus on.
And I think this makes it nice and easy too, because one of the conflicts that testers go through is if they do the standard static regression test, right? Let's say, not using Probit, but the standard regression static test where you're using the same load from build to build to build to build, same model, same test scenarios, and looking for, so that's your control. You're looking for a change in the responses, right? That's a great test. It's still a very valid test. The only issue is that it doesn't reflect the real world stuff. So oftentimes what we always saw in the past is you would run your regression test, everything looks great, put it into production, and for some reason what users are doing changes and things break, and then they turn back to the testers and say, how come you didn't, and that's the big question of what you're doing here. They turn back to the testers and say, why didn't you catch that? And the testers will say, well, we're using this static model as our control. We don't have access to what the real users are doing. Now they can, if they still want to run a static model to look for, small controlled changes, okay, that's test number one. Now let's run the real production regression to model what the real users are going to do and see what the performance is. And you now have this super rich data set on which to make your decisions on pushing out or also finding other problems that go into it. I wish I had this tool like 8 years ago when I was still in performance testing. Wow.
Sorry, we weren't there yet, but
yeah, let's go back in time.
Yeah. Hey, Thomas, I got another question. How do you deal with data, with the test data itself? Because if you have 1 million users, and I understand that you can, obviously, probability-wise figure out what's the average amount of money that people are transferring. So that's input data. But how do you deal with the underlying test data and the test data and the test system? So, for instance, if your bot picks up a use case that is actually transferring money, and then the bot, I assume, is logging in with some test account.
Yeah.
And what if that account doesn't have enough money on the bank account to actually do the transfer? Is this something that you also factor in? How does this work?
So, thing is, if you are doing a transfer and you don't have enough money, there is an error popping up saying, hey, you don't have enough money. For us, that's perfect. That's normal behavior. That occurs in production. That sometimes occurs in the testing system also. So actually, we don't think that is a problem. We are continuing the testing and see that the normal path should also be feasible. So we have a test set of a few hundred test users, and if one of them doesn't have enough money on his account to transfer, that's okay. It will give an error, but your application shouldn't crash on that. Another thing is that the data is actually, the testing data is the major issue in all testing systems. And we are trying to solve that or trying to face that in the way that we don't really care about the data, we care about the behavior patterns. And we are using some data because you have some probability distributions of input data. But for example, we have a functionality here which says open your car insurance. That only works for customers who have a car insurance. So in our testing system, sometimes this works and sometimes it does not work because you don't have a car insurance. And we are solving that by keeping a success rate for each action. And each action is executed a number of times and say, hey, this one succeeds in 50% of the cases, for example. If this continues to succeed in 50% of the cases, there is no issue. If this drops to 10% of the cases, then there is an issue, and then this is flagged for further investigation.
Okay, so basically what you're doing then, you're comparing the success rate from test run to test run, because that actually tells you if the system is stable or not.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
And if the success rate keeps stable, there is no problem. Mm-hmm. If the success rate drops, then we are reporting this as a possible incident.
Andy, I wanted to build on that with one more question. With the data, with GDPR, right? There's a lot of issues with that. And one of the scenarios I always like to bring up is the idea of search, right? When you're testing a search system, one of the there's two issues that people commonly run into when testing a search issue. Either you say, maybe we'll have 10 search terms. I'm just exaggerating a little. We'll have 10 search terms. We'll run those. Issue with that is now you've cached the data for those 10 search terms and you get your responses back immediately because everything's cached. If you go to the other extreme where we're going to have a large number of unique search terms, then you're never exercising the caching, right? Which is unrealistic as well. I would imagine using the real search terms or some of the real data users are inputting would make that model, very, very accurate to what's going on. But how do you reconcile? I mean, it probably comes down to an individual data point, but is it easy to tackle this? How easy is it for you all and for customers to tackle this with GDPR? Is there, over here in the United States, we don't have to deal with that as much, at least not in the local side of things. If you're an international customer, obviously, yes. But how do you tackle knowing, or is it easy to know which data you can leave as customers inputted versus which ones you have to change?
It's not easy to see that indeed, and we are having some algorithms on that. So we are using some algorithms to see if data is really random. If you have certain amounts or certain strings, then we are checking the randomness of this string and also how much it is reused by different customers. If you are using the search term say hello and the other one is using the same search term, it won't be specific for you. If you are searching on your bank account number, then it's specific for you. No one else will look on your bank account number if you use that in search. So that's a little bit how we are doing that, but it's not easy. It's one of the hardest things to actually deal with this data. Therefore, we make the system by default. It captures a number of things, and you can add more data to it. And while it is running, it is also adjustable, of course, in our console, and then you can play around with that. But it's not an easy problem to solve.
Right, but it sounds like you could at least look at the patterns of the data being used, and then with your own data that might not be the user's data, model that pattern.
Yeah, indeed. We have some ways to defining this, which is not always sufficient, right. And we need to continue working on that.
Pretty cool. Hey, I got another question. I think you alluded already into it a little bit, but so you are creating test scripts, and you said you're using existing tools that might already be out there. What are the type of scripts that you're generating? Using Selenium? Using any other things? What do you do?
Yeah, we are using Selenium because we are focusing on web applications. I think Selenium is the standard currently. So we are using Selenium scripts, and then we can be executed on several browsers. We are using a Selenium grid underlying, so we can add actually whatever you want. We are looking into working together with some providers on that. We are checking Sauce Labs or Browser Stack, which are offering these different browsers. Now we are doing it in our own system, which is of course more limited. But because we are working with web applications only, currently Selenium is good for us. Once we will move to the mobile, it will be harder, of course. You have Salandroid and so on, but that needs some more investigations. Currently, we're focusing on web applications only, especially because of the limited amount of resources we have to implement all changes.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And any plan on taking it a level down on HTTP level to generate more load, even though obviously I know you want to simulate the real end user by doing real user replay, but any thoughts on taking it a level down to protocol level so you can just simulate more load?
Yes, actually, we are looking into that, but we are not going to do that again all the way. We are trying to work together with Neotis. They are very good in this load testing, and we have been working on a model now on a first proof of concept that Neotis they use in some interceptor, and this interceptor can be used in between our robot and the system. And so they intercept our testing and they can enhance that to be used as load testing. So we are indeed checking out this, but it will be in a cooperation with Neotis.
And we were talking with Henrik at Perform, Andy, and he was telling us, I think this is probably something you all might collaborate on. Henrik was talking about how in Neotis now they're creating a capability to create scenarios as code, right? So instead of having to go into the GUI, so then that would mean that you'd be able to leverage your AI scenario to generate a file of what that look, which is
that's indeed how we do it.
That's really, really awesome.
Yeah, and actually, I mean, yeah, we're working with him on that, and I think there's also he showed it at the one of our training days that we had to perform, where they have a YAML-based script definition that you can then run, or you can also write your Java-based or JUnit-based test scripts. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, we are running it in Java because we have a Java background, but actually you can do it in anything you want. But we are using the Neotis WebDriver wrapper to intercept it. So that's pretty cool. We've been working on some other things on Python also, but we have a Java background, and once you're in the Java, it's kind of your style.
Yeah. Hey, and one last thing, because I think this is pretty cool. Because as once you mentioned the name bot, right, a test bot, I thought of another session that I did last week. I performed with Nestor from Citrix. He was talking a lot about chatbots and how they are using bot technology, or they wrote their own bots to do things like automated deployments. So they have a bot that is validating. Is the build good enough? Is the environment good enough that we deploy that new build into? Wouldn't it be cool from a kind of a self-service perspective to provide a chatbot to developers where I can say, hey, I'm Andy. I made a code change, and I want this code change to be now tested against, with some real production behavior. Meaning, I want to just say in my Slack channel or whatever I use, run the 10 most common use cases against my app that I've just deployed in my dev environment, and do it for me.
That would be great. That would be perfect. And I think that's one of the things that we should do. I think it's really feasible to include that. Still, we are limited in the number of resources that we have. So it might be something for next week or maybe in the weekend. But it sounds really cool. So that might be a very good idea. Thank you, Andy.
Yeah. Well, if it's something for next week, then that's awesome. Then it seems you have a lot of resources if you can take a feature request and implement it next week.
Yeah, I think it will be for the weekend or for the night or something.
Yeah.
Now, I wanted to ask about that, right? Because there's all these, as you're talking about this stuff, I'm like, this is great. How fast can we get this? How big is Probit right now in terms of company?
Yeah.
Like, is it just like you working on this, or how many?
No. So we created this as a project within KBC. So we created it for KBC online application only. That was the first part. And since end of last year, we are coming out now to see how to generify it and to make it usable for other companies. And we have a number of early adopters. Actually, there are 5 which are using our application, which are really have an implementation which is useful, which is really making a difference in their daily business. And it's very useful for us also to see where we did program it too close to our initial project. We want it to be generic, of course. So now we have to change several things to make it more open. And actually, you can still get involved as an early adopter, but we are going for the open public right now. So if there are possible candidates, we are really wanting to bring this live in public. Yeah.
That's great. And Andy, it's funny because we always, a lot of times there's this idea of, well, I'm going to automate myself out of a job, right? But I think this is a great example of, well, if you learn the automation, you can then start building tools like this, because that's kind of sounds like what you all did, isn't it, Tom? Like you were doing the testing, but you have the developer knowledge.
Yeah, indeed. We were coming from a developer and doing testing and QA and test automation and automate the automation.
Yeah, and that's all that leveling up we always like to talk about. But great example of how you can, you're not going to automate yourself out of a job, because there's always going to be other things you can do as long as you build on your skills. So that's really, really awesome.
I guess there's plenty to do.
Yeah. Thomas, is there anything else we missed? I think we talked about why you did it, how it evolved, what's currently doing. Any final remarks or anything that we missed?
No, I don't think so. I think we have most of what we were planning to talk on. Yeah, I am of course always available if you have additional information. If you need additional information, everyone can contact me.
Where? That's a good point. Where can people contact you? How can they find you?
Well, first of all, we have a site which is probit.cloud. At probit.cloud, you can find references to me and my colleague Frederick, which are the main contact persons now. And yeah, you were asking about how many people were working on it. So we have me and Frederick are the contact persons, and behind that there are 4 developers now working on the technical system and setting up the systems. So as soon as we have more customers, then we will be able to scale up.
And you're based out of Belgium, I believe, right?
Yes, we're based in Belgium, but actually, as this is a SaaS service that can be provided, it's really not an issue wherever you are.
Yeah. No, I just want to point it out there in case people start contacting you in the middle of the night.
Thank you for that.
Aware of what your regular business hours are.
I can imagine people being like, I need this now.
Now, yeah. He said on the podcast he can do it over the weekend. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Hey, thank you so much, Brian.
Andy, it's time to summon the summarator.
Let's do it.
Come on, do it.
All right. So what I learned today, I still like the term, automating the automation, because that's really what you guys have been doing. And I believe it's a great approach of analyzing real user behavior and therefore coming up with a model that reflects the real user behavior in a production environment to then execute the behavior against the next version of your app. I think we learned that you've done, I love obviously your initial work with KBC, so a bank in Europe, making sure that there are no issues with GDPR, which is obviously one of the strictest laws we have out there. So that's been battle tested. It's great to hear that you have your first 5 early access customers, and you are now more genericizing, if that's the right word, making it more generic, the solution to also fit in other industries for other software. I really like the idea of just having a way, especially now for developers that are going to a more continuous deployment model, to say, I want to know if my end users will still have the same experience as before. And I think instead of having to create and maintain test scripts that are artificially made up, it is great that you guys built a solution that does this fully automatically by executing the same behaviors in prod. I'm very much looking forward to what you guys are doing in the future. If people want to know more, probit.cloud. So that's really great. And I love it. You're solving a big problem here.
And Andy, I wanted to add to that. I think it's amazing what people can do with tools these days. I'm glad I'm not on the testing side anymore, only because it's so nice not being under that pressure. But I think it's an amazing time to be on that side with all the integrations and everything coming out. We were talking last week, one of the themes we kept on coming across in talking to people at Perform was using tools in different ways. And I think it was Chris Morgan at Red Hat. He's working on the OpenShift project. He said a great thing. Like his view of OpenShift is they're going to know they reach the maturity model when people start using tools, OpenShift, in ways that they did not design for. So you have like the operator that starts opening the world. We have all these tools now that have this openness that are giving people like Probit or Neotis or ourselves, anybody, the way to use data and run things in ways that we hadn't quite, not necessarily had specifically in mind when we built, but we said, hey, let's open this up so that things can happen. And it's amazing to see what is happening. I think we're just hitting the edge of where all this tool interaction can go. And if you think about, with the chatbots, I was joking with Nestor when we were talking. I'm like, so are Jenkins and Davis going to get into an argument as they're chatting with each other? But it just blows my mind seeing all the stuff that's coming out. And I just want to say to Thomas, it's amazing what you're doing. This is I wish I had this back when I was doing it, and I'm so happy you're making it, because it's going to make everyone's lives that much easier, and it's going to make testing that much more fun. So great great stuff you're doing here, and I just want to thank you as a former load tester, as a former quality tester, all that. This is amazing stuff.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks everyone for listening. If you have any questions or comments, you can reach us at pure_DT. Thomas, do you do Twitter or anything if people want to follow you or anything going on, or is there a Twitter account for Probit that they can follow to keep up on any latest news?
No, we don't have a Twitter account yet. We have a LinkedIn account.
Okay.
You also find that on the site probit.cloud.
Okay.
There is a link to the LinkedIn where you can find the latest news on how Probit is doing.
All right, awesome. Well, wish you the best of luck and can't wait to see the future development with this. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.